The fall of the Thunder Warriors. As with all the Legiones Astartes, the First Legion was intended as a replacement for the brigades of the Thunder Warriors, that unstable experiment in the creation of Proto-Astartes which, by the middle years of the Unification Wars, had run its course. The Thunder Warriors regiments had been the tool needed for their time, an unrefined and savage weapon to match the grim tyrants and debauched potentates that had inherited old Earth during the Age of Strife. Yet, in comparison to the Legiones Astartes, they were a rough breed, powerful to be sure, perhaps even individually more so than their new transhuman kin, but unable to quell their fury to work in unison. They were a mob, a storm of fury and blaze that rolled over its foes, while the Legiones Astartes were a true army, and in their unity could withstand any onslaught. Tales and theories beyond count surrounded the Thunder Warriors and their sudden disappearance from the Imperium's history, most being fabrications and sophistry of the worst kind, though a few warrant further regard. One such tale is of note, a tale told among the nomadic tribes that inhabit the wastelands around Mount Ararat, and speaks not only of Thunder Warriors, but also of an army clad all in grey, dark as the clouds of a storm, and branded all as one. These warriors, so say the hill nomads, await the return of the few surviving Thunder Warriors, exhausted by their victory, and rather than giving salute to their valor, cut them down in a thunderous volley of bolt and plasma. This tale is far different from the heroic tale told by the Remembrances to mark the end of the Unification Wars, but in keeping with the brutal necessities of the Emperor's far-reaching plans. It is possible that the warriors branded all as one could be the First Legion, who all bore the sigil of their numeration bold upon their battle plate, for battles of that legion were oft removed from imperial record, the details expunged and forgotten. Actual proof, however, does not exist, not even in the archives of the Imperial Palace. Yet several anecdotes from the later years of the Great Crusade do seem to support the theory, all related to a near-obsessive preoccupation with the hunting down and destruction of those few renegade Thunder Warriors that survived and fled Terra, over and above the standing orders of the Imperial Court to suppress all such renegades. On at least 3 occasions, fleets of the First Legion altered course in order to engage and destroy Thunder Warrior survivors, often making wide detours based on simple rumors of such activity. Such an obsession is notable for what was an otherwise stoic Space Marine Legion, and would seem to hint at a more personal interest in the resolution of any encounter with surviving Thunder Warriors, perhaps even a sense of shame in having allowed any to escape some previous engagement. Another ancient source claims that even before the Unification Wars had ended, the Thunder Warriors, already jealous of their replacements' long lives and near immortality compared to their own inevitable descent into madness and death, at last realized that their creator had cursed them with short lifespans as a result of their imperfect genetic augmentations. In their rage and fear, they turned upon the Emperor for what they saw as his betrayal. It was a cadre of several hundred custodians of the Legio Custodes, the Emperor's lifeguard, even then believed to have been led by the legendary Constantine Valdor, and accompanied by several thousand prototype Astartes of the First Legion of the newborn Space Marines that stood in the Emperor's defense, carrying out a merciless culling of the obsolete and rebellious Gene soldiers. However, given the renowned secrecy of the First Legion and the frequency with which their campaigns and deeds were were obfuscated by imperial decree, it is unlikely that the truth of this matter will ever be known. The First Legion was intended to demonstrate the true potential of the Astartes versus their predecessors among the Emperor's armies, for they were a true legion, numbering already 10,000 transhuman warriors, while their early kin among the other nascent legions were but a few hundred each. It was at Samarkand on Terra in 668 M30 during the Unification Wars that the First Legion took to the field en masse for the first time, assembled with the Emperor himself at their head. Here, the Legiones Astartes faced their first true test, not a test of individual strength or genetic purity, but a test of their worth as an army. 10,000 of the first, flanked by contingents of 4 other legions, took the field against 200,000 gene-forged Uduk-Hul, the elite slave soldiers of the King of Akkad. The Uduk-Hul, whose blood was poison and whose strength was greater than 10 unenhanced warriors, were the terror of the Upper Asiatic Basin and a foe that had so far resisted the advance of the Emperor's armies. 10 solar hours after battle was joined, Samarkand was in ruins, the Uduk-Hul scattered and broken, and the great King of Akkad's head, a trophy on the belt of the newly appointed Grand Master of the First Legion. This warrior, Hector Thrain, was lauded by the princes of Terra for his victory and granted the title Sinestra of the Emperor, the left hand of the warlord of Terra, his most fearsome instrument of conquest. By order of the Emperor, the First Legion left no stone upon stone, and almost every record of the terrors encountered in that battle was destroyed. In the wake of the victory, the rate of recruitment and processing of the new Space Marine legions was accelerated, their potential proven in triumph, and the First Legion gained a dark renown among the ranks of the armies of Unity. They had walked into the mouth of Hell, and not only had they returned, but they had left Hell shattered in their passage. This first victory was to set the pattern of the First Legion's battles during the wars for Old Earth and the Sol System, pitting them against the most horrific of foes, with only one objective: to eradicate them completely. From Fortress 31 in the Thalian wastes of ancient Terra to the Battle of Karnakon amid the cryovolcanic mountains of Sedna, the First Legion would meet the worst threats that faced the armies of Unity and lay them low. So horrific were many of the threats they faced, xenos terrors beyond the pale of sanity, and psychic phenomena that threatened to tear reality asunder, that little more than the battle honors remain, the details erased even from the data stacks of the Emperor's library. To prosecute these impossible battles, the Emperor would grant them access to the armory vaults of the Imperial Palace, to every forbidden weapon entombed within, and they would be the only legion trusted to wield the worst of mankind's creations freely. The orders of Grand Master Hector Thrain would see the obliteration of the warped cities of Kadun and Malay in the eastern reaches of Old Earth, and the deployment of gene-phage munitions to purge Enceladus, one of the moons of Saturn, clean of Crave infestation. These were victories that left an indelible stain on both the course of the war and the identity of the warriors who prosecuted them, forging Thrain's reputation as a ruthless and prideful warlord. Among the armies of Unification, the First Legion had become synonymous with death, for where they walked, it seemed as though that pale rider followed after them with an inevitability that spawned many long-held superstitions regarding the reclusive warriors of the First. They were treated with an awe that sat somewhere between respect and terror by those who served alongside them, for it was said that to offend them was to bring the scrutiny of their patron, Death himself, upon the offender. Among the host gathered by the Emperor, they were not heroes, but rather a breed of monster, made loyal by the will of their master. They were not to be lauded for their bravery, but rather placated to assuage their wrath. Despite the dictates of the imperial truth, the common soldiery of the imperial armies often set small wards and charms at the edges of their camps when the First Legion arrived to avert the ill luck that many felt followed the Emperor's firstborn legion. Such superstition was not without cause. 4 of those imperial formations attached to support the First Legion in combat, most came to bloody ends. Some were savaged by the monsters that the newly dubbed Angels of Death had come to slay, and others would simply vanish, purported to have been silenced by the First Legion themselves, lest word of some dread enemy return to the camps with the survivors. The warriors of the First Legion, ever a pragmatic mind, soon began to assume the guise in which they had been cast, adopting the skeletal icon of death as their own and adorning their armor with funerary symbols. This self-imposed exile from the camaraderie of the Emperor's lesser servants was a point of pride among the First Legion. It was a sacrifice made to protect the mortal army from the terrors only the First Legion were fit to bear, though to some of those they fought beside, most especially the warriors of the other Legiones Astartes, it seemed more vainglory and arrogance than humble sacrifice. The masters of the First Legion showed no interest in such slights, content to remain wreathed in malign rumor as they fought the battles that could never be lauded, lest they break the minds of those who bore witness to the battle honors. For while the younger legions were granted the lesser honor of standing triumphant at the mundane victories of conquest, the First Legion would be awarded the greater honor of acting as the Emperor's left hand, a brutally efficient weapon of grim aspect hidden behind the bright pageantry of the Imperial army.